First of all, the unconditional covenant is never done away with, because the unconditional covenant depends on who God is. That's never done away with. And we see this through that covenant when God says to Abraham, cut the animals in half. And then he puts Abraham into a deep sleep. Now, this is the way they used to make covenants back in the Old Testament days in this part of the world. Cut animals in half and the blood would mingle, and then the two people who are making this covenant would walk through the center, and they would do something. I don't know what they do. Maybe they'd shake hands or give each other a high five or whatever the situation might be. But they're basically saying whoever breaks this covenant is going to end up like this, like these animals. And what God did is he says, cut the animals in half. The blood was mingled. Then he himself put Abraham into a deep sleep. And God himself, in a theophany, an appearance of God in the Old Testament, went through as a burning fire and a smoking torch. Fire and smoke in the Old Testament being a sign of the very presence of God. On Mount Sinai, fire and smoke. The children of Israel in the wilderness for 40 years, a column of smoke and a pillar of fire. God himself, that's the unconditional covenant. And in that covenant, he promises to give us the land from the river of Egypt to the river Euphrates. Oy, are we going to be in trouble once we get all that land? Anyway, so that's unconditional. That's permanent. Nothing we can do will take that away from us. Our right to live in the land depends on our obedience to God. And when we are disobedient to God, when we worship idols, we're sent out to Babylon. Then we come back from Babylon and we're still disobedient from God, as opposed to living by faith, although there was a significant number who did. We're trying to establish our own righteousness, and we reject the apostles' testimony to the resurrection, and then we end up hating each other. We're back out. Now we're back the second time actually, from exile, because the first exile was Babylon. And now we're back, and we're back to stay. Because God's brought us back in unbelief, and now he's promised to save us. So the land has always been there, but our ability to live on the land, to possess the land, depends on our obedience. The problem with many believers now is they see this nation as an unbelieving nation. And they say, well, what right do they have to the land? Maybe we should give the Palestinians a state now and send Israel back in exile until they submit and they all come back as Christians. And then we have a Jewish Christian nation, which will... I'm not sure if that's ever going to happen. We're going to have a Messianic Jewish nation, but that's not what God's plans are. God said, I'm going to bring you back in unbelief, and then I'm going to save you. But the key chapter here is in Ezekiel 36, where God says, I'm not doing this for your sake, O house of Israel. You be ashamed and confounded for your ways. I'm doing this for my holy name's sake. And so God is in the process of glorifying himself by taking this unsaved nation, bringing us back to our inheritance, giving us back our land, and then in the midst of all this trouble, he's going to pour out his spirit of grace and supplication and save us.